Let's do the Faulkner Focus Voters' Voices on the top issues now. We are 74 days out from the nation's first primary contest, the Iowa caucuses. Meeting today's Voters' Voices now, Joe T. You can give us a wave if you want. Sarah A., Eddie A., Sam S., Bonnie, give us a shout. There she is. And Dan B., welcoming everybody. Not only will we hear from you, you will be able to ask questions directly to our presidential candidate, GOP today, Vivek Ramaswamy. Welcome to everybody. All right, let's get started because I want to go right away to you. Dan, you are a Democrat among us today, and I want to ask you to ask your question because you want to focus on the Israel-Hamas war, and that's where we're going to start.
Vivek, I just want to ask, as a person who supports, obviously, Israel's right to defend itself and its right to, strike back at Hamas for the horrible attack, I haven't seen your positions, moderate at all. And I'm wondering if you think that there's any limit to the amount of bloodshed that is justifiable on behalf of attacking Hamas.
I appreciate that question, Dan. And so my view is that what Hamas did to Israel was subhuman. It was medieval. And because of Israel's right to national self-defense, I'm running for president of the United States, not president of Israel. It's my job to protect their right to defend themselves. So imagine if that happened in this country, how would we want to defend ourselves? That's exactly the right that Israel has itself. Now, as a friend, if I'm the president of the United States, I would talk to the leadership in Israel and let them know that I do have some concerns of their own probability of success for a prolonged ground invasion in Gaza. I would encourage them to go for an in-and-out operation, quickly target the leadership of Hamas, get that job done. I have trust in the IDF to get its job done. But my job as president of the United States is to provide, I would say, diplomatic cover, a diplomatic Iron Dome, to let Israel do what Israel needs to do in order to defend its right to exist without being questioned by the UN, the EU, or for that matter, even the U.S., as we also stay out of a broader war in the Middle East ourselves.
Can we talk about the United Nations for a second?
Yeah.
This morning, the UN is making the chair people of the Human Rights Department at the UN Iran.
It's unbelievable. And by the way, you want to know who some of the other members of this Human Rights Council have been at the UN? North Korea, Venezuela, others. So the UN has quickly devolved into a joke of an institution, Harris. And I have long said it is reasonable for the U.S. to even reconsider our funding or participation in the UN. Years ago, when I used to say things like this, people said, well, that sounds a little bit extreme. But my question is, what purpose is the UN serving versus how is it actually impeding our own sovereignty or the sovereignty of our allies like Israel today? The Secretary General's comments about Israel last week were shameful, trying to create a false equivalence between Hamas's actions and Israel's defense. And I do think when an institution outlives its purpose, we should ask those questions.
Well, and when those comments are made right here on U.S. soil, it's because we host the so-called neutral ground of the United Nations.
That's right.
I don't know if we want to rethink that, too. Let's stay just with this topic for a second, because, Sarah, I know that you have a question about the Israel-Hamas war, too.
Hi. So during the first Republican primary debate, I was very surprised to see that you were the only candidate that raised their hand when asked if you think the U.S. should stop sending money to Ukraine. And I was wondering, do you hold the same belief when it comes to us sending aid to Israel due to the recent unfolding events in the Middle East?
It's a great question, Sarah. So I do apply similar standards across the board. One of those standards is we keep our pre-existing commitments. So we give a $3 to $3.8 billion aid to Israel that we are committed. We've made that commitment. It was a 10-year commitment before. And what I've said is that we would keep that commitment intact until the day that Israel tells us that they're ready for us to cut that off. Until then, we stand by our prior commitments. However, I'm against any further specific military support of this war. I support, as I said in the earlier case, the diplomatic cover that Israel needs to be able to defend itself. But I don't think it's in either Israel's interest or our interest for the U.S. to get involved in another protracted conflict in the Middle East. An older generation of Republicans, Dick Cheney and George Bush, sent our sons and daughters, people my age, to die in places like Iraq and Afghanistan that didn't serve the American interest. $33 trillion national debt today, $7 trillion of that is due to those two wars alone. So I want to be very careful not to make those mistakes of getting the U.S. itself, our sons and daughters, involved in another prolonged war in the Middle East, at the same time diplomatically standing for Israel's right to defend itself and rooting for and standing for the IDF's ability to get its job done. So in that sense, I am consistent. America first means something to me. I think that it's my moral obligation as the next U.S. president to put the interests of American citizens here first, while standing for our allies, which in this case we'll do diplomatically, and also keeping our prior commitments. We stand by our commitments, but that's what we're going to keep.
Anybody with a press back? Another question, follow up. That's a big topic. I would say this, we're already getting hit. 28 times they've attacked our bases, and those are Iran-backed proxies, as we call them. They're hired terrorists. That's what they do for a living. They get paid by Iran. So we are having to hit back at this point.
So I have a rule of thumb on this, Harris.
Okay, go for it.
If you hit us, talking about hitting American troops, whoever it is that's directly hitting us, we will hit you back 10 times harder.
So would that be Iran in this case?
Well, we have to have evidence of connecting it to Iran. Whichever group actually hit us, we will hit that.
They pay for the bullets and all the equipment.
Well, we got to be really careful about the theories of proxy warfare that we use, Harris, because if we cross that bridge, then Russia would have a right to hit the U.S. because we're arming Ukraine. So I think we have to stick to the normal rules of engagement here. But if you hit us, whatever group that is, we will hit you back 10 times harder, while also evaluating our presence in places like Syria and Iraq over the long run, where I don't think we should actually be anymore.
Well, the criticism from generals and others that I've interviewed on the focus is that, sending 2 planes with 2 missiles to hit 2 things inside Syria a week and a half ago was not proportionality, that we should be doing
10 times harder.
10 times
That's
harder.
what I say.
Okay. All right, let's get to Joe, and welcome. And your question is on the economy. In fact, that was a top topic for a few of you.
Sure. What would you do to reduce the inflation if you were president?
Joe, it's the #1 question in our economy. Here's the answer. Increase the supply of everything that matters in the United States, starting with energy. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy. If you increase the supply, the cost comes down. That gives us economic growth. Here's another one. You want to know what's driving inflation? A supply chain shortage driven by a shortage of workers. Stop using our taxpayer money to pay people more money to stay at home instead of to go to work. Here's what's driving housing prices up. Regulations that restrict the construction of new houses, what they call land use restrictions. Get rid of those, increase the supply of housing, prices go down, growth goes up. So I'm a CEO, I'm a businessman, I'm not a politician. For me, this is economics 101. This is basic. But I do think we live in a moment where it will take a CEO in the White House, likely coming in from the outside, to deliver these basic solutions. And the other thing in our federal budget, this will help our debt and inflation, is start with zero-based budgeting. What does that mean? Not last year's budget, which is already broken, and then tinker around the edges. Forget that. Start with zero as the baseline, and then ask what's actually necessary. And that gets the government spending out of driving inflation as well. Hope that, does that address your question, Joe?
Yeah, it does pretty much.
Yeah.
No, the other thing is interest rates are high.
That's
and
right.
People are not buying houses now or can't afford to buy houses because of the interest rates. So the younger generations can't buy a house and move into a house. So they're living with their moms, living with their dads, Well,
so, Joe, I think you could do better than people on the current economic council in this country because it's simple. Prices are going up. Interest rates and mortgage rates are going up.
Sure.
But wages have remained flat. So no matter what the Biden White House says, people across this country feel that. That's the source of the economic frustration. I know how to fix it. Takes a businessman, I think, sometimes to get that done, and I will.
All right, a quick show of hands, everybody. Abortion, LGBTQ, liberal ideology in schools, those issues, are any of those in your top 3? So cultural issues. All right, Bonnie, I'm going to come to you on that. Do you have a question for Vivek on it?
Sure. I mean, education is a very important tool for all of our children, and I have grandchildren in elementary school now, and the things that they're being taught, I believe parents should have a chance and a voice to say exactly what they're being taught, and that's being taken away from a lot of our parents. What would you do to help us?
As the father of 2 sons, I have a cardinal rule here. Parents determine the education of their children. And the real head of the snake here is the U.S. Department of Education at the federal level. They're taking $80 billion of your taxpayer money, our taxpayer money. And then what they're doing, this is behind the scenes. They will tell these public schools that you don't get that federal money unless you adopt these toxic racial and gender ideologies. That's really where it's coming from. It's not bottom up, it's top down. Well, the good news is the next U.S. president, if you all put me there, that Department of Education, like the rest of those 3-letter agencies, report into me. I'm going to shut down the U.S. Department of Education and then give that $80 billion back to parents across this country to be able to choose, to be empowered, to decide where they send their kids to school. That kind of competition and choice, that's how you dilute this racial and gender poison to irrelevance. And it starts at the top, and that's my job as your next president. That's a job I know we can get done.
Vivek, just real quickly, because you hear Republicans talk about where they're going to do away with the school board and all of that. I mean, during the pandemic, they had so much power in our lives.
Yeah.
They not only shut down schools, but they forced parents to find ways to become the teachers in the classroom at home, which is different than a stay-at-home, teach-at-home type of situation, because you planned for it. Ours was forced.
Yep.
I mean, we had to do it. And thank the good Lord some of us could do that, because once we found out what they were teaching our kids, we could do a better job.
There's a silver lining in every crisis, Harrison. Here, at least we learned things, and we as parents were alerted to things that we otherwise would not have paid attention to. There's something funny that happened, though, and it's sad. A lot of the inner city schools remained closed, whereas private schools remained open. Apparently, COVID only affects public schools, right?
Right.
That's the joke. But then they started saying math is racist because because kids in the cities are performing more poorly than kids in the suburbs. Math is not racist, but what was inequitable was shutting down those schools in the cities while leaving the ones in the suburbs open. So let's learn from that and not make those same mistakes again in the future.
By the way, we already knew it. 1918, and boy, I take a lot of grief on Twitter for saying this, or X as we call it now. In 1918, we didn't shut down the largest school districts. In fact, here in New York City, they never closed it. There were 50 million people who died across the world in that flu pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic. But they did exactly what you're talking about, and they protected those schools, particularly here, and there were a couple of others here on the Eastern Seaboard that had high populations. All right. Eddie, Sam, you guys are in the spotlight. Your concerns are public safety, and let's stick with the border. Sam, I'm coming to you for a question on the border.
So as a son of legal immigrants to this country, me and my family are worried about all these tens of thousands of illegal immigrants coming through our southern border. And now they're here, the government has to waste their taxpayers' money on housing them, fooding them, and other necessities that they, need since they're here. My question is, if you're elected president, how would you deal with the millions of illegal immigrants in this nation already?
Well, Sam, you and I have something in common. We're both the sons of legal immigrants to this country, and we shouldn't conflate that with the illegal immigration crisis. So I personally went to Eagle Pass, Texas, right on the southern border a few weeks ago. I have never seen a larger scale violation of the rule of law orchestrated by the government in my life. So we know how to solve this. No more Central American aid, foreign aid, until they solve their side of the border crisis. Aquatic barriers in the water, use the military to seal the southern border. End birthright citizenship for the kids of illegal immigrants that the 14th Amendment was never intended to cover. Stop federal funding for sanctuary cities. We can't pay for breaking the rule of law. Now, you asked the hardest question of all, though. What do you do about the people who are already here? And that's a tough one, because many of these are good people. The Biden administration gave them a wink and a nod, and they came over with their families. But we're a nation founded on the rule of law. And if we stand by that, that means, and I will, anyone who is in this country illegally has to be returned to their country of origin. Because as a father of two sons myself, I can't be in the White House as your next president, look my two sons in the eye and tell them they have to follow the rules when the government itself doesn't follow its own rules. So we'll do it with respect. We'll do it with compassion. But we will think on the timescales of history and say, yes, we actually followed the rule of law. That has to be the answer.
Well, look, the person who's managed to do that more than anybody else in the last decade or so was a Democrat. That was Obama. And former President Obama was chided within his own party, and they nicknamed him Deporter-in-Chief, and he really took a lot of grief on that, but it was necessary. Now, I don't know what he would do today, because the politics are different.
Well, the Democratic
seen what
Party,
Biden is doing.
I mean, this radical left has now the Democrat Party in a chokehold. But I don't view this as a particularly partisan issue, because you asked me that question. You know where else I got that question? I went to the south side of Chicago in a room full of voters, hard Democrat voters, 90% black, people who they would say don't talk to if you're in a Republican primary. You know what? Everybody else in that room favored the same policies that Sam and I are talking about here in the border, too. So this, I think, goes beyond partisanship, and that's what I think this America First agenda can be about.
All right, Dan, if we have time, I know you're a Democrat, we'll hit you, too, but I want to go right now to Eddie for anything you want to add or a question on the topic.
Vivek, you see Democrat cities are dealing with a big influx of crime. You know, their progressive policies are utter failure. You could see it. You know, the police are going out there every day and doing their job, pounding the pavement, making arrests. We can't keep these criminals in jail. What and if, when you are president, what would you do to help alleviate and help the police and the investigative entities keep these bad people in jail and get rid of these progressive policies that are here today?
So there's two things we know we can do that work. In fact, they've worked in cities like the one we're in right here today, New York City in the 1990s and others across the country. The first is make sure police officers are able to do their job. More cops on the street without looking over their shoulder for fear of being sued. That's a big problem today, and it's why you have recruitment crises in police departments. But the second thing is, this one's really controversial to some. We need to bring back psychiatric institutions in this country, mental health institutions. The number one source of mental health care, I put that in air quotes, is our prison system. Many of these people should be getting mental health care. Psychiatric illness is driving this wave of violent crime. And so I won't be afraid to bring back those mental health institutions. That's a touchy subject. There were abuses in past decades.
It is a touchy subject.
But we don't need to have those abuses. We can learn from the past. And the dirty little secret, Harris, is this is actually a big part of the pharma industry's lobbying. Because it's when the pharma industry developed antipsychotics that they said, actually, it would be better for pharma if these people weren't in those psychiatric institutions. So they used the abuses of the past as one of the many excuses to shut them down. I think we need to bring back faith-based approaches and other approaches, but psychiatric care, and yes, when necessary, involuntary commitments of people who are dangerous and psychiatrically ill. If we have the courage to do that, we deal with our violent crime problem.
All right. I do want to come to you, Dan, our Democrat on the panel today. Just any fast thoughts on the border crime?
Yeah, mainly, I just want to know, Vivek, as the son of immigrants whose policies are extremely anti-immigrant and extremist by a lot of measures, as a double Ivy League graduate who is hilariously anti-elitist, as a person who attended public schools who wants to eliminate the Department of Education, apparently, I'm wondering how your voters can be sure you're not just going to turn on them if they give you power.
So, look, I think that part of my views are a product of my experiences. I went to a relatively poor public school through 8th grade before I went and had an opportunity to go to a Catholic high school that put me on the path that I was. I want every kid in this country to be able to live the American dream that I was able to live. I'm not anti-immigrant. I'm anti-breaking the rule of law. I think we need sensible immigration policies to bolster certain kinds of legal immigration, but we can't do that until we fully address the illegal immigration crisis. And that's why I know you're a Democrat. I'm running for the Republican primary for U.S. president. But I think the dividing lines in this country are not anymore between black and white or even between Democrat and Republican. It's about reviving the basic values that I think you and I both share in common, Dan. I think we're both committed to the rule of law. The rule of law means that we stand for the rule of law regardless of your skin color. That's why I want to barricade the southern border. I think we stand for the American dream. That means that every kid should be able to live the full American dream, whether they go to a public school in the inner city or a private school. And so that's, I hope, how we're going to unite this country. And I'm grateful to you for asking that question.
We're going to have to wrap it up. We want to come back. By the way, almost to a person, maybe there were a couple of exceptions. Most of you have decided who you're going to vote for. Did today's conversation help you in that? Is something that you'll tell me later. But I'm really glad that you were here today because you help a lot of people by asking questions from your point of view as voters. So God bless you all, and thank you. Vivek, thank you for being here.
Thank you,
Great
Harrison.
to see you.
It was a great conversation with you all. Thank you for the question.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.